In the serene town of Penrose, Colorado, a macabre secret lay hidden behind the doors of a small funeral home. A place meant for peace, dignity, and final goodbyes instead became the epicenter of an unthinkable betrayal, one that would shatter the trust of an entire community. Jon and Carie Hallford, the respected owners of Return to Nature Funeral Home, built their business on a promise. A commitment to eco-friendly burials, a service meant to honor the dead while protecting the earth. Families placed their loved ones in their care, believing in a dignified farewell. But behind closed doors, that promise was a lie. Nearly 190 bodies left to rot. Money misused for luxury cars, extravagant vacations, and cryptocurrency schemes. What was meant to be a peaceful sanctuary became a house of horrors. As the truth unraveled, investigators uncovered a crime so disturbing, so calculated, that it left the nation in shock. How did this happen? How did two trusted funeral home owners deceive hundreds of grieving families? And most chillingly, how long had the deception been going on before the stench of death finally exposed the truth? Stay with us as we delve into this harrowing tale of fraud, deception, and devastation. This is the story of Jon and Carie Hallford and the funeral home of horrors. For many, death is a sacred transition, a time when the living entrust their loved ones to those who promise care, respect, and dignity. Families believe in the final farewell, a moment of peace, a ritual that offers closure. But for nearly 190 grieving families, that promise was a lie. When Margaret Thompson lost her husband in early 2022, she sought an eco-friendly burial, a return to the earth, a simple, natural farewell. The Return to Nature Funeral Home in Penrose, Colorado, seemed like the perfect place. They promised green burials, no embalming, no metal caskets, just nature reclaiming what it was given. Jon and Carie Hallford, the owners, assured her that her husband's remains would be handled with care, buried in a biodegradable shroud beneath the Colorado sky. She paid thousands for that promise. Months passed, and Margaret waited for a certificate confirming the burial. It never came. She wasn't alone. Hundreds of families, from all walks of life, placed their trust and their most cherished loved ones into the hands of the Hallfords. Parents, spouses, children, veterans, all sent to a place that called itself Return to Nature. But instead of nature, there was neglect. Instead of peace, there was rot. For years, families unknowingly received fake ashes, a cold mixture of powdered concrete and deception. The bodies they thought had been buried or cremated never left the funeral home. What happened inside the Return to Nature funeral home was not an accident. It was not an oversight. It was a calculated betrayal. Jon Michael Hallford, a third-generation funeral home director, has deep-rooted ties to the funeral industry, particularly in Wagoner and Muskogee counties in Oklahoma. He graduated from the Dallas Institute of Funeral Service, equipping him with formal education in mortuary science. In May 2016, Jon and his wife Carie established the Return to Nature Funeral Home in Colorado, promoting eco-friendly burial services. By 2019, they expanded their operations to Penrose, Colorado, marketing it as an alternative to the traditional funeral industry, a green choice for families seeking an ethical, natural burial. No harsh chemicals, no high costs, just a promise of simplicity and sustainability. But that promise was a facade. While grieving families paid thousands for these services, behind closed doors, bodies piled up. Instead of properly burying or cremating remains, the Hallfords hoarded the dead, allowing nearly 190 bodies to decay in a facility with no refrigeration, no preservation, nothing but neglect. The conditions inside the Penrose facility were unimaginable. Decomposing corpses, stacked on top of each other, the smell of death seeping into the walls. Flies, rodents, the grotesque horror of human remains left to rot. For 4 years, they took the money, issued fake death certificates, and continued to expand their empire of deception. But where did all the money go? Not to funeral costs, not to the dead. Instead, it funded a lavish lifestyle, luxury cars, extravagant vacations, high-end shopping sprees, and cryptocurrency investments. It was only when the stench of death became too strong to ignore that the truth came spilling out. As the community of Penrose reeled from the horror, authorities launched a full-scale investigation. The Fremont County Sheriff's Office was the first to respond, acting on complaints from locals who reported an overwhelming, sickening odor drifting from the funeral home. When law enforcement arrived, what they discovered inside the 2,500-square-foot facility was beyond anything they had seen before. The FBI quickly joined the case, along with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Inspector General. The more they uncovered, the more horrifying the truth became. The Hallfords had not only abandoned the dead, they had abandoned the law. They had stolen nearly $900,000 in COVID-19 relief funds meant for struggling businesses. They had lied to the families who trusted them, and worst of all, they had let bodies decay, hidden behind locked doors, while they enjoyed the spoils of their deception. Jon and Carie Hallford were no longer just funeral home owners. They were fugitives. By the time authorities closed in, the Hallfords were gone. Vanished. But their time was running out. In the quiet town of Penrose, Colorado, the autumn of 2023 would unveil a horror that no one could have anticipated. Residents began to notice a foul, pervasive odor seeping through the air, an unsettling presence that clung to their daily lives. Complaints mounted, and the source was traced to a seemingly innocuous establishment, the Return to Nature funeral home. On October 4, 2023, local authorities, acting on the community's concerns, obtained a search warrant to investigate the premises. What they discovered inside was beyond their darkest fears. The remains of 190 individuals were found in various stages of decomposition, haphazardly stored, without the dignity or respect promised to their grieving families. Some of these bodies had been there since 2019, left to decay in conditions unfit for any living being, let alone the deceased. The proprietors of this establishment, Jon and Carie Hallford, were immediately thrust into the spotlight as the primary suspects. Their business, once advertised as a sanctuary for eco-friendly burials, had become a grotesque facade. Investigations revealed a disturbing pattern. The Hallfords had been accepting payments for cremations and burials they never intended to perform. Instead, they provided families with fake ashes, often composed of dry concrete mix, betraying the trust placed in them during the most vulnerable moments of their clients' lives. Financial records uncovered a trail of greed and deception. The Hallfords had misappropriated nearly $900,000 in COVID-19 relief funds intended to support struggling businesses during the pandemic. Instead of using these funds to maintain their operations or ensure proper care for the deceased, they used the funds to purchase items such as a $92,566 GMC Yukon XL and a $28,336 Infiniti. Over the span of 4 years, from 2019 to 2023, the couple indulged in lavish trips to Las Vegas and California, as well as shopping sprees at high-end stores like Tiffany & Co. and Gucci. They also invested in cryptocurrency. Their financial mismanagement not only defrauded the government, but also compounded the suffering of the families who had entrusted them with their loved ones. As the depth of their misconduct came to light, the Hallfords fled Colorado, attempting to escape the inevitable consequences of their actions. However, in November 2023, law enforcement apprehended them in Oklahoma, bringing an end to their brief flight from justice. They were extradited back to Colorado to face a litany of charges. In April 2024, a federal grand jury indicted Jon and Carie Hallford on multiple counts, including wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud, for defrauding their clients and the Paycheck Protection Program. The indictment detailed how they had deceived mourning families, providing fake cremains, and failing to honor their contractual obligations, all while siphoning funds for personal gain. The legal proceedings were extensive and emotionally charged. families of the victims attended court sessions, seeking justice and grappling with the trauma inflicted by the Hallfords' callous actions. In October 2024, both Jon and Carie pleaded guilty to 1 count each of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. This admission marked a pivotal moment in the case, acknowledging the extensive harm they had caused to both their clients and the broader community. The return to nature scandal not only exposed the egregious misconduct of the Hallfords, but also highlighted significant gaps in regulatory oversight within the funeral industry. The case prompted legislative reviews and reforms aimed at preventing such atrocities from occurring in the future, ensuring that those entrusted with the care of the deceased are held to the highest ethical standards. In the aftermath of the harrowing discoveries at the Return to Nature funeral home, the wheels of justice began to turn, seeking accountability for the unimaginable betrayal committed by Jon and Carie Hallford. In August 2024, a civil court delivered a landmark judgment against the Hallfords. They were ordered to pay $950 million in damages to the victims' families, a sum that stood as a testament to the profound pain and suffering inflicted upon those who had trusted them with their loved ones' final rites. While the Hallfords' financial insolvency rendered the payment of this amount unlikely, however, Jon and Carie Hallford, who own the Return to Nature funeral home, still face criminal charges in a separate case. "I'm never going to get a dime from them, so I don't know, it's a little frustrating," said Christina Page, who had hired the funeral home to cremate her son's remains in 2019. She carried the urn she thought held his ashes until the news arrived that his body had been identified in the Return to Nature facility 4 years after his death. "If nothing else," she said, "the judgment will bring more understanding to the case. I'm hoping it'll make people go, 'Oh, wow, this isn't just about ashes.'" The judgment served as a symbolic victory, acknowledging the depth of the family's grief and the egregiousness of the Hallfords' actions. The ramifications of this case extended beyond the courtroom. The state of Colorado recognized the urgent need for reform to prevent such tragedies from recurring. In response, legislators enacted stricter regulations governing funeral homes and crematories. These reforms included mandatory licensing for all funeral service providers, regular and unannounced inspections of facilities, and stringent protocols for the handling and disposition of human remains. These measures aim to restore public trust and ensure that the deceased and their families are treated with the utmost respect and dignity. While the legal and legislative outcomes provided a measure of closure, the emotional scars left on the victims' families and the community of Penrose remain deep. The Return to Nature scandal stands as a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities that can exist within essential services and underscores the importance of vigilance, regulation, and compassion in industries entrusted with our most sacred moments. The case of Jon and Carie Hallford is not just a story of fraud and deception, it is a story of trust betrayed. Families, already burdened with grief, sought solace in what they believed to be compassionate, ethical care for their loved ones. Instead, they were met with lies, neglect, and unimaginable horror. Their final goodbyes were stolen, their memories tainted. The Return to Nature scandal is one of the most egregious abuses of trust in funeral home history. Nearly 190 bodies left to decay, hundreds of families deceived, and a community forever scarred. But beyond the pain, beyond the legal battles and the court rulings, this case leaves us with something even greater, a question. How do we prevent this from happening again? How do we ensure that those entrusted with our final farewells honor their commitments with dignity and respect? Laws will change, regulations will tighten, but none of it will bring back what was lost. The families affected by this tragedy will carry the burden for a lifetime, a wound that time cannot fully heal. We must hold those in positions of trust accountable. We must demand transparency from the funeral industry, push for oversight, and support the organizations that fight for victims' rights. If this story has moved you, let your voice be heard. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Discuss what needs to change, and above all, never take trust for granted. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more true crime stories that uncover the hidden truth and demand answers. Together, let's shed light in the shadow and ensure every voice is heard.